Hello, and welcome to Roly Poly Weight Loss. I'm your host, Roly Poly, and welcome to day 35. So let's go. Okay. Today we are talking about the next big chunk on our list of weight factors, which is modern food. We touched on this briefly before in the context of marketing and what kinds of things companies put on their labels. But today we're going to get into more detail on two other topics which tie together, which are engineered junk food and sugar. Now, I am not going to touch on genetically modified food here, because GMOs could be their own episode. And generally speaking, those are ingredients or whole foods, like a fruit, vegetable, that kind of thing. Engineered junk food is a whole different beast. As Healthline explains in their original article on weight factors, heavily processed foods are often little more than refined ingredients mixed with additives. These products are designed to be cheap, last long on the shelf, and taste so incredibly good that they are hard to resist. By making foods as tasty as possible, food manufacturers are trying to increase sales, but they also promote overeating. Most processed foods today don't resemble whole foods at all. These are highly engineered products designed to get people hooked. So you can see where these are different from modifying the genetics of a tomato to make it bigger or redder or whatever. So it's a different thing than GMOs. Now, here is where we also get comparisons to drugs and drug addiction. And these are not all hyperbole. There are some studies, which we will get into, that show that food can cause similar reactions in our body to drugs. John Oliver, in his episode on this, shows a 60-minute clip where the expert says, "Sugar activates our brain in a special way that's very reminiscent of drugs like cocaine." And this is not the last time we'll hear that comparison. Now, this also ties into sugar, which is our second subsection here. A lot of time, these are talked about together. And part of that is because one of the ways that they modify or engineer the food is to add sugar. So when we're talking about the effects of the modification, that is also the effects of adding sugar. So I'll try to make distinctions when they are relevant, but just know that these are closely tied together. So, where to begin? Let's start with what and why we're modifying. So books and insider blogs and tell-alls are becoming more of a thing about the food industry, delving into the shady engineering side of this, big food. And it's coming to light more and more about what kinds of things they're doing. As I said, John Oliver, he did a deep dive segment on sugar in 2014. The New York Times, Salon, CBC have had major articles come out around the same time. But that was several years ago, so why don't we know more about this? Why aren't we more aware of this? Basically, because they've made us addicted and we don't want to know what it is. Basically, the food industry for years has has engaged in a crazy amount of testing and engineering and focus grouping to create the perfect item. So former industry executive Bruce Bradley told CBC These products are designed to keep you coming back to eat more and more and more. They're trying to increase their share of your stomach. And they are literally engineering the heck out of these things to do it. And to understand the research, you need to speak the language. There's mouthfeel, maximum bite force, and the important concept of sensory-specific satiety, the rate at which a food product loses its appeal as it is being eaten. So bite force isn't just how hard you have to bite on something either. They use this special jaw machine that costs thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to figure out how many chews it took to break down things like chips and crackers and whatnot. And they even assess the loudness of the crunch. I didn't think the crunch thing was a big deal, but apparently it is. The importance of crunch was confirmed in a study funded by Unilever, where the scientists tested whether people's perception of a chip was altered by the sound it made when they bit into it. The researchers concluded that the potato chips were perceived as being both crisper and fresher when the overall sound level was increased. So literally how loud something is when you chew it affects how you feel about it and how much more you want to eat it. And then there's, as I said before, how long it takes you to actually chew the thing. If you're munching on something forever, like a carrot, I can see how you would get tired of it. But that's not all. Apparently, some foods can just about trick us into thinking we're not eating anything. It also helps if the food dissolves quickly in the mouth, tricking the brain into believing that no calories have been ingested. It's called vanishing caloric density. What happens is that your brain gets fooled into thinking the calories have vanished, and you're much more apt to keep eating before the brain sends you a signal you've had enough. So, how fast something like chews down and then dissolves on your tongue can trick your brain into thinking there wasn't much there. And this goes even further, as Medical News Today notes. Given the way foods are processed, they are often very easy to chew and swallow. Sometimes it's almost as if they melt in your mouth. Most of the fiber has been taken out, and the ingredients are refined, isolated nutrients that don't resemble the whole foods they came from. One consequence of this is that it takes less energy to eat and digest processed foods. We can eat more of them in a shorter amount of time, more calories in, and we also burn less energy, fewer calories out, digesting them than we would if they were unprocessed whole foods. So, not only are our brains tricked into thinking that we didn't eat as much as we did, but our bodies are also burning less calories to get rid of this food. So we're gaining more weight on that end. So, that is your vanishing caloric density. There's also the mouthfeel, the feel of it in your mouth during every phase of the bite, and the taste, which should apparently be exotic, but not too exotic. Food industry consultant Thornton Mustard, which is a fabulous name for someone to work in the food industry, Mustard, he explains, that's an expression that says when food has one overriding flavor. If it's attractive, it will be really attractive to us initially, but then we'll get tired of it really fast, Moss said. And so these companies make a concerted effort to make their foods not bland, but really well blended. That's so people don't get too full too fast and stop eating too soon. If the taste builds too much, consumption will stop. And snacks need to be eaten non-stop until the packet is finished. So, two things there. One, this is why if you're eating something that's a really overpowering single flavor, like chocolate or cake or something like that, you can go, oh, that looks so good, I'll have a bite, and then you get sick of it really quickly and you're like, nope, I'm good. But something with a more complex flavor, like, I don't know, Cheetos or Chex Mix or something like that, that's been highly engineered to have this super complex flavor, it's good so that we keep eating it, but it's not so good that we're like, no, that's enough, I'm good. It wants us to keep eating, which is the second thing, which, as they said, snacks need to be eaten non-stop until the packet is finished. So, from a food industry point of view, one serving for us is an entire package, maybe a second package if it's small. They don't actually expect us to follow the serving sizes written on the package. They expect us to eat the whole thing. They're engineering it to make us eat the whole thing or want to eat the whole thing. They're literally engineering their food so that we can't stop eating it. And that's just the act of chewing and stuff. That's just the taste on your tongue and the crunch in your ears and the feel in your mouth. That's literally just based on the act of chewing the food, not on packaging or anything it does once it's in your system or ingredients. All of these are just ways to manipulate you while the food is actively in your mouth to keep eating. So, Salon's expert adds, people who wolf down their food do not entirely have themselves to blame. The actual time it takes to chew food has shrunk. In the 45 years that I have been in the food business, we used to have foods that we chewed 15 times and 20 times and 30 times before we swallowed. So they have engineered our food to even make us eat faster, meaning that we eat more before our stomach and brain can coordinate and realize that we're full. And again, it leads to that wolfing it down, like almost inhaling your food, because our body and brain and senses are being driven to just have more, have more, have more, and it doesn't take as long to chew it, so we can just go and inhale. Now, Medical News Today has a very interesting article about this, and they lay it out evolutionarily. Evolution provided us with taste buds that are supposed to help us navigate the natural food environment. Our appetite gravitates towards foods that are sweet, salty, and fatty, because we know such foods contain energy and nutrients that we need for survival. Many processed foods have been engineered to be so incredibly rewarding to the brain that they overpower anything we might have come across in nature. So our, for lack of a better word, primitive cave person system tried to bribe us to eat what our bodies needed. But now companies are hijacking that bribe system to get us to eat their food in excess quantities. So they continue. We have complicated mechanisms in our bodies and brains that are supposed to regulate energy balance, how much we eat and how much we burn, which, until very recently in evolutionary history, worked to keep us at a healthy weight. There is quite a lot of evidence that the reward value of foods can bypass the innate defense mechanism and make us start eating much more than we need, so much that it starts to compromise our health. So, our systems normally would know how to keep us at a healthy weight. But these hijacking foods are confusing our body, that system, to make us eat beyond where our normal system would say, that's enough, you have what you need. It doesn't do that shut-off valve anymore with these engineered foods. And it gets worse. The truth is, processed foods are so incredibly rewarding to our brains that they affect our thoughts and behavior, making us eat more and more until eventually we become sick. Good food is good, but foods that are engineered to be hyper rewarding, effectively short-circuiting our innate brakes against overconsumption, are not good. Which, when you lay it out like that, duh! Of course, when you're eating that hyper-rewarding food, doesn't feel that way. It feels, I'm being hyperly rewarded. And this is where the addiction side comes in. Not only do we get more reward from eating these engineered foods, and not only do we eat more of them than we should, but we literally become addicted and can't stop eating them. So Salon has a list of foods that are engineered to be addictive to us, and often are bad in other ways. And may I just say that I am completely unsurprised by number one from personal experience. Half of Americans drink a soft drink every day, and many people say they are addicted. This is not an accident. Of course, caffeine is one reason people get hooked on soft drinks. Constant exposure to caffeine makes your brain compensate by decreasing the number of receptors for its own stimulant, norepinephrine, which makes you seek the stimulation from an outside source. But there are other probable addictors, as seen in Mountain Dew, arguably the most addictive of the soft drinks. Of course. So, I personally have never liked the cola-flavored soft drinks. Whether that's Pepsi, Coke, Dr. Pepper, whatever. The brown-colored cola ones, yeah. So I only drink the citrus-flavored and the fruit-flavored sodas. Sprite, Mountain Dew, Fanta, that kind of thing. And so that's all my life. It's been that way. And so starting in high school, but really picking up in college, I became hardcore addicted to Mountain Dew. Literally, if you added up all of the cans and glasses in the cafeteria and everything that I ate, or I drank rather, it would be the equivalent of at least 2 liters a day. I mean, that's how much we're talking. I literally drank it like it was water. I drank it instead of water. It was the thing I drank all day. Was Mountain Dew in college. To this day, my caffeine or norepinephrine receptors are shot. I could chug a 2 liter before bed and it wouldn't keep me up at all. Caffeine, I am so non-receptive to it because I have just shot that in my brain. And it was literally, again, not a caffeine problem because it just could not affect me anymore, the caffeine. But if I stopped drinking it, I would literally go into withdrawals, headaches, nausea, cravings, the whole 9 yards. So I actually, during grad school, finally quit cold turkey. which was miserable. Um, and in the years since, I allowed myself, first it was like one drink like every 6 months. And I've slowly crept that back, including soda, including Mountain Dew again. It's no longer my main form of hydration, and I can often go weeks to months at a time without it. That said, I don't know if I have actually broken free of that addiction, or if I am just getting those addictive chemicals from some other engineered food. I certainly drink a lot of vitamin water, which in the grand scheme of things is not as good as water, but better than Mountain Dew. All vitamin water bottles. So it's a work in progress. Could I drink less soda than I do now? Absolutely. Is it as bad as it was during the height of my addiction? Not even close. So yeah, when the first thing on their list was soda, not surprised. When they said Mountain Dew was the most addictive, not surprised. I have personal experience with that. So number 2 on their list is cured meats, specifically bacon. And they did some research that characteristic bacon flavor apparently comes from some nitrates, chemicals, and without it, people think the bacon just doesn't taste right. That specific flavoring, those nitrates, is what makes bacon bacon, or makes fake bacon acceptable bacon substitute versus not. Those nitrates also happen to be carcinogens. So, you know, aside from all of the other problems with bacon and the addictive elements, it's carcinogenic. Yeah. The chemicals that give buttered popcorn, number 3, its irresistible allure, both by smell and by taste. They cause something dangerous called popcorn lung, which sounds both delicious and gross. There have been lawsuits, both from people working in the factories and from consumers, over consumers, but still. Of course, it's a chemical, it's not natural, but it hijacks our brain anyway. That's why when you smell popcorn, you have to have popcorn. It's not even a taste thing. You go into the theater and smell. Someone at your work makes some. Someone makes some in the kitchen downstairs. The minute you smell it, you have to eat it too. It's hijacking your brain. Number 4 is a rather broad category and contains basically all salty snacks, from your chips to your mixed nuts to my own beloved Chex Mix. All of it is engineered to addict you. Like sugar, people can become addicted to salt, and the only way to kick, say experts, is to go cold turkey and let your taste buds return to normal. But the salt isn't the only danger hiding there in this group. Carbs, in general, from crackers to bread to cereal, undergo the Maillard reaction, which is basically when you bake them and they turn all golden brown and yummy. Okay, that's bread, that's any baked, wheat type things. That's why I said cereal, crackers, everything. So cooking carbohydrate-rich foods at temperatures high enough to produce a yellow or brown surface usually means that acrylamide has formed. And you guessed it, acrylamide is a cancer-causing and potentially dangerous chemical. Once again, the chemicals that make food irresistible are the ones we should resist. The state of California actually sued potato chip makers for failing to warn Californian consumers about the health risks of acrylamide in 2005. So yeah, there's cancer again. And literally to the point where they got sued by the state of California. So yeah, when you see that, like, gorgeous looking French bread at the grocery store, or those like rolls during the holidays or something, that golden brown yumminess, addictive and cancerous. And that's not all. These carbs have another dark side. One of the main problems is that refined, simple carbohydrates are quickly broken down in the digestive tract, leading to rapid spikes in blood sugar and insulin levels. This can lead to carb cravings a few hours later when blood sugar levels go down again. This phenomenon is also called the blood sugar roller coaster, which many people who have been on a high carb diet can relate to. And I have not been on a high carb diet per se, but in case you couldn't tell, I really love bread. So yes, I can relate to this. And also, hey look, another thing that we'll crave and want again shortly, like an addiction. I told you these all tie together. And bonus round, most of those salty snack foods have that vanishing caloric density that we talked about earlier, where they melt in your mouth and your brain thinks you barely ate anything. Bread especially does this, but like crackers, all of that, where it just goes. And finally, it turns out that potato chips are basically just pure evil in delicious form. Potato chips have another hook, say food experts. Their coating of salt, fat, and sugar found in the starch of the potato itself reward the brain in a triple punch. The starch is actually absorbed more quickly than sugar, which causes glucose levels in the blood to spike and the body to yell more. A New England Journal of Medicine study of 120,877 women and men found the most weight-inducing food they ate was potato chips. So, over 120,000 people, the worst thing for gaining weight they ate, bar none, potato chips. Evil. And the final engineered food on Salon's list, worse than potato chips, is another broad category, which is basically all fast food ever. Fast food, of course, is predicated on cravings and addictions. Why else would it fast, including drive-through windows? Why else would its overriding features be salt, fat, and sugar? 83% of people who eat outside of their home do so because of cravings, a recent study revealed, and 75% who visit restaurants more than once a week do so for a specific dish they crave. Now, I can personally attest that I will go through phases of craving specific fast food chains and dishes, and that I will go even when I'm not really hungry because I'm craving it. Now, I've mentioned I work nights, and so the Taco Bell is one of my weaknesses. Taco Bell closes at midnight. At 11:30, I may not be hungry. I may not be hungry for another hour or two. I may have just eaten an hour earlier. But if I don't go now, the Taco Bell will be closed and I will not be able to get Taco Bell until 7 a.m. So I will go now and get Taco Bell while I can, even though I'm not hungry. There's something wrong with that. And this is something that when I was watching The Biggest Loser, when people were shooting their before videos, their little video diaries to get them entered, or when they were talking about their previous experience, so many of them had these secret trips to the drive-thru for this specific craving, whatever it was. that they would eat daily, if not more than once a day. So in these people that are the most in need of help, you see this, where they've got their fast food that they have to go get at least once a day, and that's their thing that they're unable to stop going and getting. So, again, this is an addiction. Now, for just a glimpse at what kind of engineering can be behind fast food chains, Salon notes, McNuggets are probably the McDonald's item with the most problematical chemicals. They are made with dimethyl polysiloxane, an anti-foaming agent used in, believe it or not, yoga mats. Propylene glycol, an antifreeze ingredient, and autolyzed yeast extract, which artificially enhances the taste and craveability of food, says Healthy Living. So, yeah, you, and of course me, because I am a Nug fan, are basically eating yoga mats and antifreeze, and a specific chemical designed to make us crave it more. Because they've tricked our brains into making us crave these things. And of course, by pairing them with what our bodies are naturally told to crave, sugar, salt, and fat. So, CBC notes, salt, sugar, and fat are the three pillars of the processed food industry, Michael Moss said. And while the industry hates the word addiction more than any other word, the fact of the matter is, their research has shown them that when they hit the very perfect amounts of each of those ingredients, they will have us buy more, eat more. For some people, the most highly loaded, salty, sugary, fatty foods are every bit as addictive as some narcotics. So here we go. In part, the sugar can be what makes it addictive. And there's that comparison to narcotics again. Medical News Today adds, it is the main reason why some people just can't stop eating these foods, no matter how hard they try. They've had their brain biochemistry hijacked by the intense dopamine release that occurs in the brain when they eat these foods. This is actually supported by many studies. Sugar and highly rewarding junk foods activate the same areas in the brain as drugs of abuse like cocaine. And Salon agrees. Clearly, sweet, salty, and fatty foods can be hard to resist, especially when they are ubiquitous, cheap, marketed around the clock, and fast. But just to be on the safe side, Big Food has also added addictive chemicals to amp up the irresistibility. Yeah, it's not just our body's natural things that we're addictive to, it's adding addictive chemicals too. There's an amount of engineering that has to go into it to make it processed food, to make it something that lasts on your shelf. They have gone beyond that into making it so addictive by using our natural body's addictions and by using addictive chemicals. And that literally, as they said earlier, their goal is to have us eat the entire package and not stop and maybe eat another one. And their goal is to have us crave some things so that we will leave our house to go get it. That is the super over-engineering. And that is where sugar, our natural cravings, come in, and that is where they are like literally making us addicted. So that's what's happening to our food. So this has been Roly Poly Weight Loss. As always, I am your host, Roly Poly. Use the hashtag processed food to share any information you may have about engineered food. There will be a part 2 to this one talking a bit more, not about the addictive side, but about what actually goes into processed foods from a point of view of what kind of elements go into them. So, yeah, please use the hashtag, share what information you may have or stories you may have, and please join me next time.